Happy Pride Month! Today we're going to be talking about non-binary representation, why we need it, what to avoid with it, how to do it right, and more. As always, this video is for members of the LGBTQIA+ community and our allies, so if you're a bigot, you can click off right here. But without further ado, let's get into it. Sup peoples, and welcome back to another video. Last year I did a Pride themed video, so this year I decided to do not one, but 4 of them. I already have one up about trans representation on my channel, so feel free to check that out once this one is over. There are a lot of elements of that can be applied to representation across the board. But this week we're talking about the non-binary community specifically. Now you might be asking yourself, what does non-binary even mean? According to transequality.org, some people don't neatly fit into the category of man or woman, or male or female. For example, some people have a gender that blends elements of being a man or a woman, or a gender that is different than either male or female. Some people don't identify with any gender. Some people's gender changes over time. People whose gender is not male or female use many different terms to describe themselves, with non-binary being one of the most common. Other terms include genderqueer, agender, bigender, gender fluid, and more. None of these terms mean exactly the same thing, but all speak to an experience of gender that is not simply male or female. While not all of the identities that I am making these videos about are ones that I personally can relate to, this one is. But even so, if you notice me making any mistakes, please point them out in the comments. I have lived only my own experience, which by no means makes me an expert. Which brings me to my first point, research. Now, I already touched on this in my last video, but it's worth mentioning in every single one, because while it is extra important if you are going to be writing about a community or identity other than your own, it's still important even if you're writing about a community you are a part of, because every experience is different. The things that I'm dysphoric about are not the things that every non-binary person is dysphoric about. The things that give me gender euphoria are not the things that give every non-binary person gender euphoria, and so on and so forth. But with research and care, you can do a wonderful job even if you are not a part of the LGBTQIA+ community at all. Now, how do you do this research? Listen to people. It's really that simple. There are 1,000,001 YouTubers, Instagrammers, TikTokers, and more talking about their experiences and sharing them online. They are great resources for learning about the community and seeing examples of people's experiences being a part of it. And the more different experiences you're exposed to, the better picture you'll get in your mind of how to create a new and unique experience for your very own character. Because that's just it. Everyone's experience is unique. Yes, we can probably all relate to other people's experiences in one way or another, but we're not all living the same life, and so our experiences will all be different in some way. I can relate to another non-binary person's experience. That's actually how I discovered I was non-binary, while also having my own unique one. So try and capture that when writing your character. Their experience can draw from those you've seen, but it should still be unique and special to that character. There is no template for the non-binary experience. So why is non-binary representation important? Let me tell you a little story. I had long hair my entire life. It never really bothered me, but I had always wanted to cut it short. Specifically, I wanted to have Velma's haircut from Scooby-Doo. Don't ask me why, but it was my thing. I think she was the first character I ever saw who had a bob, and I just really latched onto it. When I was 15 or 16, my mom finally cut my hair for me. We chopped it all off, and I had the bob of my dreams. For like a year, I loved it. I was obsessed. I thought I looked great. But then something started to happen. I would look in the mirror, and even though I thought that I looked good, I also looked wrong. I didn't know anything about the trans or non-binary communities, so I just assumed it was insecurity, that I was just experiencing what every human being does. I decided that I just needed more self-confidence. But looking back, the signs, oh my gosh, they were smacking me in the face and I didn't even notice. I hated looking in the mirror. I thought that I looked wrong, that the way the hair framed my face looked wrong. I hated wearing skirts and dresses. I thought the way that they hugged my frame looked wrong. Tight shirts made me uncomfortable. Again, the word that came to mind was wrong, 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 wrong. Now, I think that the word is important. I didn't think I looked ugly. In fact, when I had my hair all nice and curling on my face and I was wearing a tight-fitting dress or something of the sort, I would look in the mirror and my brain told me that I looked good, that I looked conventionally attractive, that I looked like a pretty girl. So you can imagine my confusion when the same outfit that made me feel like a pretty girl would make me cry. I avoided looking in the mirror. I started putting my hair up in a bun and hiding it under a baseball cap every time I went out. I started layering flannels over all my outfits to hide my body. It would be more than 2 years of that before I figured out I was non-binary. simply because I didn't know that it was an option. Finally, when I was 18, I asked my mom to cut my hair again. Short this time, like really short, just as an experiment. We cut it into kind of a pixie cut, and when I looked in the mirror, I started crying. I started getting emotional just writing this part of the script. I actually was emotional writing most of the script. I started crying, but not because I was sad. That is literally the only time I can remember crying happy tears in my entire life, except for when I tell the story or talk about it or write about it. Whenever the story comes up, I get really emotional because I looked in the mirror and the only way I can explain it is that I finally recognized myself. When you picture yourself in your mind, what do you look like? Do you look like the person in the mirror? Well, for years, I didn't. I would picture myself, and then I would look in the mirror, and some strange lady would be looking back at me. But then, with my hair cut short, I looked in the mirror, and I was looking back at me. I basically spent like the next hour crying on and off and just beaming uncontrollably. That is a core memory for me. But guess what? I still had no idea I was non-binary. That's right, we're only halfway through the story. It would be another 6 months before I stumbled upon a video, totally by accident, by one Ash Hardell. And they talked about how they discovered they were non-binary and finally being able to recognize themselves. And in that moment, I just kind of knew. They had lived an entirely different experience to me, and yet this one thing that I could relate to, it helped me discover a whole world. I started looking into the non-binary community, thinking about pronouns, looking at binders. I was still too nervous and new to it to actually try anything for another year or so, but now look at me. They, them pronouns, a binder in my closet, and some newfound confidence. Coming out as non-binary has been one of the best decisions of my life, but mostly coming out to myself. Because once I discovered what being non-binary was and accepted myself, it opened the door to accepting other things about myself. I have become so much happier and more confident in just the last year of my life, which, incidentally, is about when I came out officially as non-binary. I had been playing with the idea and thinking about it and talking about it, but last year was when I finally made the decision to just be me and embrace whoever and whatever that meant. And you know what being out to myself as non-binary did mean? It meant I felt free to experiment with clothes and my gender expression, which in turn led me to feel confident enough in my identity to reclaim some more traditionally feminine parts of my wardrobe that had previously made me feel really dysphoric. I had loved the look of dresses, but hated wearing them for years. But after coming out as non-binary, I was able to reclaim them and discover the way to wear them that made me feel confident. I was able to stop wearing hats to hide under and start wearing them because I liked wearing them. And I was able to really study language and the way it made me feel. I discovered that I didn't like the word pretty, but I did like the word handsome. And while that might not feel important, before I thought that I just hated being complimented, and now I know that it's about the word choice. I learned so much about myself because I knew what the word non-binary was and that it referred to me. It made me feel like I was allowed to explore myself and how to best be myself. It gave me a sense of community and my notes in the script say I'm getting emotional again. Anyway, this is why non-binary representation is important. That's why representation in general is important. Imagine if little 16-year-old me had started to hate their appearance. Instead of having to figure it out all on their own over the next 2 or 3 years, they had already known what being non-binary was. Imagine all the progress I could have made by the time I was 19 instead of starting then. Imagine all the self-hatred and dysphoria that I didn't know was dysphoria, and all the crying and all the uncomfortability I could have skipped. That's why I do this, because people deserve to see themselves in stories so that they can find themselves sooner. And so that once they do find themselves, they can feel seen by other people. And my script says I'm getting emotional again, and how many times did I cry writing this? Okay, now that I've told you about that really long story, let's talk about how to actually write this representation that is so important. If you're watching this video, then I really doubt that you would intentionally write a harmful stereotype into your story. But you might do it accidentally, just because they've been in the media you've absorbed over the years. Like I said in the last video, if you always see gay guys being represented as flamboyant, then your brain will automatically go, oh, they're gay, so they must be flamboyant. This is an unintentional bias, but still one that we need to be careful of. So when writing a non-binary character, or any character from a marginalized community, be careful not to accidentally lean into any harmful tropes and stereotypes. That's one of the reasons that research I mentioned is so important. Now, there are also tropes that, while not harmful, are maybe stereotypical. For example, a lot of times in media, non-binary characters are AFAB, which is short for assigned female at birth, and they look a certain way. They often are white, skinny, and androgynous, which is leaving so many people out. A lot of people identify with the term non-binary because they don't ascribe to traditional gender norms, not because we're trying to create another over-specific gender norm. It is totally fine if the person that I just described is you. Honestly, it's me most of the time. And you and I both deserve to be represented in the media. But so do all the myriad people that description does not fit. I want to see non-binary characters who are assigned female and male at birth. I want to see non-binary characters of every skin tone and every weight. I want to see non-binary characters who are assigned female at birth and still like to dress traditionally feminine. I want to see non-binary characters whose gender expression is more fluid. I want to see non-binary characters who have as much variety as any other character. So once you've made sure you're not falling into any stereotypes with their appearances and presentations, what about their personalities, their storylines? How do you write those well? It's really simple. Just write them like you would any other character. Their whole story doesn't have to be about being non-binary. In fact, it shouldn't be. Just write them like any other person, because they are just like any other person. Being non-binary is just a single facet of them, and that's the most important thing to remember. The word non-binary does describe me, but it doesn't describe my personality or even my appearance. Because there is no one non-binary look, just like there is no one non-binary personality. Now, there's a chance that you're staring at me right now and going, what? You made a whole video just to say that we should write them like any other character? Obviously. And you know what? If your answer is obviously, then that is amazing and I can't wait to read your work. But unfortunately, it's not obvious to everyone. A lot of people still don't even know what being non-binary is, let alone how to write it. When I make these videos, I go online and I look at forums of other writers asking for what people wish there was more of in representation, because I want to see what people say in the comments. And you know what most people say? They say that they want a character who has stuff going on outside of just being queer. They say that they want well fleshed out characters with hobbies and interests and lives that have nothing to do with their identity. They say that they want characters who look like more than just the one stereotypical representation we see most in media. They're not asking for much, but it's unfortunately still hard to come by. I hope that this video helped you out, and if there's anything that you wish there was more of in non-binary representation, let me know in the comments down below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because next week we'll be talking about how to write asexual representation. And speaking of representation, if you want to rep both your queer sibs and this channel, I now have a shop. Check it out in the description, as there you can find my Pride Month exclusive rainbow Sup Peoples shirts. I will be taking them down on the 1st of July, so make sure to get one before they're gone. I'll see you on the next page. Till then.